Jump right into our first smart topic for you. You know those swabs and vials and samples that you give at the doctor's office? They could be worth tons of money to researchers. So who profits if they are? You or the research labs?
And who even thinks of what happens to that stuff after you hand it over?
Well, that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. Seriously. Well, we don't really think about where those samples might go after the doctor's finished with them.
Yeah, you're not really saying, gee, can I have my urine sample back?
Right, exactly. And I really don't, to be honest with you. But a lot of you are sounding off on our Smart Family 15 Facebook page about it.
That's right.
Like Rochelle Heron says, if I gave my consent for them to do it, then it would be okay.
All right, so take it, she says. And Stella Valdez says, only if I give the okay.
Yes, and Ricardo says, perfectly fine.
And Rita Brassfield says, if they get prior authorization and if it helps someone, save someone now or in the future, then yes.
Oh, I like that one. And Jacqueline says, without scientific tests, we would be nowhere. We would have no medicines or procedures to save lives. We wouldn't even know to wash our hands to prevent illness. I don't understand what could possibly be unethical about them using your blood to save thousands instead of just one.
Okay. And Candace Clark says they have to test on something, but I think maybe when you donate, you can check how you want it used, like for your body, like you do for body donation of organs, or have it played with by the scientists. Either way, you're actually helping.
That's right. And they're all great comments. So let's see if you change your mind after our next story and join in on the conversation. You can always find us on Facebook.com/SmartFamily15.
We have an incredible story to tell you about a woman who is saving thousands of lives every year, even though she herself died nearly 60 years ago. Scientists discovered her cancer cells had the amazing ability to not only survive in a petri dish, but thrive there. Those unusually resilient cells have multiplied billions of times now and are being sold to laboratories all over the world to help search for cures to dozens of diseases. The problem is, her family never knew about it until about 25 years ago, just after her death. Here is ABC's Ron Claiborne.
A major medical hurdle was crossed with the discovery by Dr. Jonas Salk of the anti-polio vaccine.
They were the cells that helped Jonas Salk discover the polio vaccine, and they led to new treatments for cancer and other diseases. They were used to test the effects of atomic radiation, and all of those cells came from this woman, Henrietta Lacks.
I think we owe a lot of gratitude for what Henrietta provided.
In 1951, Lacks went to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, suffering from cervical cancer. There, doctors took some of her tumor cells for research. Rebecca Sluter's written a new book about her called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks.
They never asked permission to take the cells, which was standard at the time.
They just took them?
They just took them.
Now let me show you a bottle in which we have grown massive quantities of cancer cells.
Researchers discovered that Lacks' cells did something they'd never seen before.
They just never died.
They just kept growing.
They kept growing and growing and growing.
Henrietta Lacks died at the age of 30, 8 months after she was diagnosed with cancer. But her cells lived on. They provided an endless supply for researchers around the world, and eventually for biomedical companies to sell. And no one in Henrietta Lacks' family knew any of this for more than 20 years. When they were finally told in the 1970s, they were stunned and then angry.
That's the main thing that's troubling me about it. Why was it kept such a big secret?
The DNA is in the nucleus.
Her family had little money, and perhaps the greatest irony, some of them could not afford health insurance. But as they learned more about the medical advances from her cells, all the lives saved, the anger gave way to pride.
What makes me happy about it is that it's something that my mother has contributed to the world.
To this day, Henrietta Lacks' cells continue to lead to major medical breakthroughs. The companies selling her cells make billions. And to this day, her family has never been paid a cent. No one has ever said sorry.
The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks is now a New York Times bestseller, nonfiction, and word of her story is spreading around the world. Joining us now is Erica Ashcroft from Barnes & Noble Desert Ridge to tell us a little bit more about this fascinating read. Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you again, too.
I picked this book up about a year ago, and as soon as I started reading it, that was it. Everything else had to just wait until I was finished with the book.
It's just breathtaking. It was just amazing. It just are so surprised at the type of things that happened. And with nonfiction, when you can read something and understand it, it just makes that much better.
Yeah, in this situation, I think a lot of people say, how could her cells have been in all of these different laboratories now around the world, and they were just so unique? What's so fascinating about that, and how did that happen?
Well, you don't really think about this, but every time you go in for a procedure or you go in and have tests done, you never ask what's going to happen with your pieces and parts.
Sure.
So they just, now there are laws against that, so they just destroy them. But back then, that was just something that they did because they were still, research was still so new.
Yeah, so new. And so they had taken basically a chunk of her cervix that had cancer and took it to test, and then realized that this was really reproducing so quickly. And they were looking for fresh cells at that time to be able to do experiments on. And so now, years later, there are billions and billions of her cells in all of these different labs around the world. To me, that's just mind-boggling.
It is extremely mind-boggling. They had taken them not even thinking that anything was going to happen with them. Mm-hmm. And then once they started developing, they just kept going and going and going. And they're now part of DNA mapping and research and
they helped find a cure for the polio vaccine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just
she's really made a tremendous impact. The one thing I think that's interesting in this piece, and that we really point out too, is that her family has had no money from any of this. They really didn't know about this even until about 25 years after she had died.
Correct. Because she wasn't paying for her medical expenses, mm-hmm. the hospital figured that this was her payment.
Yeah.
And the laws were so much different back then.
Yeah, today everything is very protected. We should tell you that if you want to read this book, the author, Rebecca Skloot, also has RebeccaSkloot.com. That's her website, and on there's an educational section for students and for teachers and for book clubs, and it really helps you kind of dig deeper into the medicine, the science, the law, and even the way she wrote this book. So there's just so much that you can grasp with this. It's a really meaty book, and of course it's nonfiction. Yes. Erica, thanks for being with us.
Oh,
we
absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Erica Ashcroft with Barnes & Noble.